You are listening to the Bandwagoners, news and notes from around the NHL. Hey, you've got the Bandwagoners. My name is Andy Cole.
And my name's Justin Boniface. How you doing tonight, man?
Pretty good. It's been a fun week of hockey. How you doing up in Mackenzie, British Columbia?
Enjoying it. Started to get cold. I got to walk to work at -4 today, so we're getting there.
Oh, fun. -4. We got some pretty decent weather in Vancouver right now. I'm not gonna lie. It's been pretty good. So yeah, let's start this guy off. I guess it's been a little bit slow news-wise this week. Like, there haven't been any major stories on, like, the first week of action, or the last week, I should say, of action. You had a bunch of, crazy injuries and such, but there hasn't been as much crazy storyline things going on around the NHL. But I guess the big thing we should talk about off the top is
not many, but
out of nowhere trade.
Sometimes quality over quantity is a bit.
This is
better.
true.
Big trades are fun, so that's what we got first.
Yeah, trades are always fun to dissect, and this is a big one. I mean, most people did not see this coming. It really came out of the blue. We got Buffalo trading Thomas Vanek to the New York Islanders for Matt Moulson, a first-round pick next year, and a second-round pick the year after that.
The first-round pick in 2014 is conditional as well. I was reading today that the Islanders have the opportunity to make that a 2015 pick, if Buffalo's pick ends up being a top 10, or if the Islanders pick, rather, ends up being a top 10.
And realistically, how the Islanders are playing and where they'll probably finish up, it's probably safe to assume it won't be a top 10 pick. But
that's right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it isn't out of the realm of possibility. I just think off the top, it really looks like the Islanders got fleeced here. Like, Regeer really pulled a rabbit out of his hat with this one. Off the top. And I mean, there are some factors in play here that may down the road make it seem like the Islanders have the better deal on the trade, but in my opinion, Buffalo definitely got the better deal. You got Matt Moulson, same age as Thomas Vanek, both 29 years old, making far less money, and he's scored 10 more goals over the last several seasons than Vanek has. So he's produced more offense than Vanek has over the last few years. Granted, Vanek has had some serious injuries, but Vanek is far removed from the two-time 40-goal player that he once was. So I personally think that as of right now, Moulson is the better player, and if even one of those two picks that Buffalo gets ends up being, a top 6, then, well, forget about it. Buffalo's got it.
Yeah, I think that is actually a possibility that might happen, and I agree with you in the sense that Buffalo definitely won this. It's a total steal, especially for this season. On top of the fact that his resale value before the trade deadline is going to skyrocket, so you might even see Matt Moulson move again before the season is out. So there's that aspect, and the other aspect is you're completely right. I think the Islanders without Matt Moulson, John Tavares is great. Don't get me wrong.
They had an amazing chemistry, though. Amazing chemistry.
They did, and Matt Moulson, I think, is a better player than Thomas Vanek is, and I think that's
at the moment
now, and I think that's going to continue. I think Thomas Vanek's game is a lot simpler than Matt Moulson's. Vanek is not a two-way player. He's an offensive sniper, scorer, deker, goal scorer, and as we've seen with Ovechkin, you can shut that down. I mean, Ovechkin's back, and Ovechkin is an extraordinary talent. I wouldn't put Vanek in that category, and I would say that once you get shut down, you're shut down. Matt Moulson uses those abilities, but he's a two-way forward. He checks, he's big, he's got size.
He can grind.
And in this NHL, as we talk about with every move, every team, size matters, endurance matters, that strength that you need to go deep into the playoffs matters. So I think Matt Moulson brings that to the Buffalo Sabres now. But without him on the Islanders, I think what you're saying is probably going to happen. You might end up seeing, maybe not this season, maybe Islanders do well this season, but you will see those picks maybe ending up higher than top 6.
Well, let's play devil's advocate for a second here as well. And I should also mention, this is hilarious, I read this today. Did you know that the Buffalo Sabres, over like the next 3 to 4 years, have something like 17 first-round draft picks stockpiled? Like
That's insane.
17! That's like a whole team. That's like in the next 4 years, they're a completely different team, pretty much, if they want to be. To the point where Regeer could probably even move a few of those if he so chose.
Andy, if they want to be, they're the Buffalo Sabres. Of course they want to be.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying.
That's like being a Flame or, a Canuck.
Hey, now, settle down over there. If you were closer, I might hit you. But you're like...
I know, that's the opportunity of being Mackenzie.
I'm just going to get a picture of you and tape it up in front of me and punch it periodically.
You gotta have like darts or something.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll play devil's advocate. Now, some will say Moulson is good and has been good because he's been playing with Tavares. Tavares has made him a better player. Without Tavares, will he be the same player? some people are saying no. Moulson might not score at the same clip that he did when he was playing with a guy like Tavares. And let's remember, Tavares is like arguably top 3, top 5 player in the world. Like, he makes any player that he plays with better. And if Moulson's no longer with him, and he's not, his first line center is now Cody Hodgson, no offense to Hodgson, but he's not John Tavares. So Moulson might lose a step there. The other flip side around with that, if you look at the pure skill of both players, Vanek is the better player hands down. He, at one point, was a superstar in the league, one of the best scorers in the NHL for a couple seasons in a row, one of the guys that has that explosive capability to just take over a game that, in a way that Moulson doesn't really have, doesn't really possess. Granted, yes, they play very different style of games, but, Vanek does have that superstar potential. So let's just say for a second now, Moulson doesn't rediscover his scoring talent without Tavares. And let's just also say that Vanek, playing with Tavares, regains that 40-goal composure. If he's able to put together a couple of 40-goal years, and Moulson does not, which is very potentially a possibility, then if you look at it like that, the Islanders come off looking like they got a much better deal in this trade, and maybe... That's
also saying that the Islanders are able to lock up Vanek
yes.
after the end of the season as well.
Same with Moulson. Both players are UFAs.
Which is why my prediction is that Buffalo will trade Moulson to a team that wants to make a playoff run. I don't think Moulson's going to stay a Buffalo Sabre.
Some will say the Islanders as well might do that with Vanek. There's rumors that Vanek really, really, really wants to go to Minnesota since that's where he played his hockey in college.
If the Islanders get a good enough offer, I think you'd be right, but I think as long as they stay in a shot for a playoff spot, they're going to hold on to Vanek, especially if he starts to do well.
I think realistically you're right.
Yeah,
okay, so what you're saying there, let's just say they're able to lock up Vanek even for 1 or 2 playoff runs, and Buffalo trades Moulson and only ends up with a couple picks out of it, then I would give it to the Islanders. I'd say they won that trade.
I agree with you in the sense that it's easier to look at a win that way because it's just a couple picks. You don't know how that's going to fit into the overall roster. But as you mentioned, Buffalo has 17 picks coming up in the next 3 or 4 years that are all in the first round. So if now when you make that 18, 19, 20, that's a big difference. You are now taking over a significant portion of the talent that's coming into the NHL in the next 4 years. And at that point, it's so diluted with picks, it's impossible to tell who wins because you never know. 2 of those players that they draft might have random chemistry with some other pick they stole from Calgary 3 years ago. It's at the stage now that roster is going to be so diluted with new talent that there's going to be no way to tell unless you can actually say that Vanek took the Islanders deep, like to a 3rd round, or Tavares and Vanek become the next Sedin twins, or the next great pair in the NHL, Stamkos, St. Louis, whatever. That would be the only real way I could see an out. I don't see an outright winner because of all of the possibilities at stake here. I mean, Buffalo could trade Moulson Moulson and Miller in a blockbuster for something amazing. You never know, right? So we'll have to see how it unfolds. But the one thing I can say with a lot of certainty is that Moulson will not be a Sabre, and I think Vanek will be an Islander.
So, and if you say that, then maybe our initial reaction saying, "Oh man, the Sabres totally won that," it may not be true. Like maybe Buffalo, or say maybe the Islanders do end up being the victor. I mean, these are a lot of big what ifs, right? Like, there's no guarantee Vanek resigns, and and even if he does resign, there's no guarantee that he becomes a 40-goal guy, right? So it's a lot of what ifs. But I mean, there definitely is a potential down the road for the Islanders to come out being the victor in this trade, especially if those picks don't pan out, right?
Yeah, so far it's definitely the Sabres. I mean, Matt Moulson scored 2 goals in his first game.
That was amazing. 1 goal.
That's ridiculous.
His first shift,
lost too.
His first shift, he scored a goal. As they were dissecting the trade on TSN, like I was watching the That's Hockey Tonight, and they were talking about wondering like. They're pretty much just saying what we're saying. Well, probably the entire hockey world has been talking about all week is this trade. Pretty much saying what we're saying, like, I wonder who the victor of this trade is, because from the outside, it looks pretty even in a lot of respects if you really boil it down. And then right as they're discussing it, Moulson scores on his first shift. And it was just absolutely hilarious and so appropriate to the topic. So, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. But so what would you say? We're in agreement here then that at the offset, the Sabres win this trade just by a little bit?
Yeah, that's how I'd call it right now. That's all you really can say, because
there's so much that has to happen, right?
He's had the biggest impact on his team since the trade, hands down. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's also important to note that Buffalo does eat $1.4 million of Vanek's salary.
That's a lot. He's got $6.5 million salary in his last season, so that's 20% of the hit. So we'll see if that affects Buffalo's salary cap significantly enough if they try and make some moves. But realistically, they're not going to be aggressive. So I think that honestly, they probably could have eaten more of it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's cool. I mean, it's cool to wake up and see a trade like this happen, especially out of the blue. I wish more trades happen. It just makes for so much fun hockey talk and speculation. For me personally, like one of my favorite parts of hockey is talking about trades. Like I just love it. I mean, I wish the trade deadline was like this. You know, like it
used to be. That's the thing is this is happening more and more throughout the season, and it's causing drier trade deadlines.
Yeah,
but I think it's going to start happening more, and we're definitely going to have. Well, I don't know about definitely, but probably going to have more trades this season than we did last year, just strictly because we have 4 extra months of the season to play around with. Yeah. But it's going to be interesting to see. But I think there could be a lot of moves this year. It's especially with the offsetting 16 teams in the East, 14 teams in the West. That adds a whole bunch of interesting topics and stuff too. And you got the teams moving like Detroit and Columbus and Winnipeg switching conferences. So there's a lot more strategy involved than there was last season, and there's a lot more pieces to the puzzle than there was last season.
Yep, no, I totally agree. It definitely makes for some exciting hockey from the outside perspective. Not talking about the actual games, but just the stuff that happens off the ice. It's cool to see stuff like this happen this early into the season. You want to talk about your Montreal Canadiens? They just had an amazing game the other night. I missed it, unfortunately. I watched the highlights, but I got to say it looked very emotional and very cool.
Well, this is right after our last show. So since then, we've actually been doing quite well with 3 wins in the last 4 games. But to start that off was a game against the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, who came into town on our first home game after a road trip. And it was a pretty solid game throughout. And Montreal took the lead, and it was like 3-0 or 4-1. At the end of the third, and the crowd starts chanting for Saku Koivu to get put on the ice. And this is because, not that he hasn't been back to Montreal since he's been traded, but that it's probably going to be his last game in the Bell Center. Anaheim only visits once this year. It's likely he's going to retire. I'm not quite sure how old he is, but definitely around that 40 mark. So the crowd is chanting for Koivu to come out on the ice, and sure enough, with about 30 seconds to go, I'm having a mind blank. Is it?
It's Boudreau
right now? Yeah, it is Boudreau. Throws out Koivu onto the ice. So Carey Price gloves it as soon as he can, gets the whistle, and the crowd just going ballistic as Koivu sets up for the face-off. Standing ovation. Just really love the fans in Montreal, and I you see this occasionally when a big hero makes a return. I can't remember how the Sundin return came when he played his first game in Toronto after being a Canuck. I don't even know if that happened. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think it did, actually, no.
This is one of the biggest receptions of an opposing player that I've ever seen in my life, and it was extremely emotional for a lot of the Habs fans, and for me specifically, for a couple reasons. So if anybody's new to hockey in the last less than 10 years, Koivu not only was the captain of the Montreal Canadiens from 1999 to 2009 for 10 years, he has been a member of the team since like 92 or 93, so he was there for about 20 seasons almost, and Koivu is a cancer survivor. He's there's a couple players out there that are, but in the hockey mecca, it was one of the first players that I know of to come back from cancer that significant. I remember his first game back against the Ottawa Senators. I think he holds the record for the longest ovation, which was 8 straight minutes. They didn't let play go on because the whole stadium was just.
I remember watching that, and that I got emotional.
Anybody who watched hockey over 10 years ago will remember Koivu skating around, holding his helmet, waving at the fans with his bald head. I mean, it's such
a powerful image.
It's so powerful, and I grew up watching Koivu, and it's different for Habs fans my age, because Habs fans older than me, Koivu might not. I mean, they respect him and they love him, but he might not be that big a deal, seeing as Henri Richard has 16 Stanley Cups, and you can name all the.
He was your first captain of your team.
But for me as a kid, not only was my first captain, but there's no glory days for me to remember. I remember Koivu working his ass off for a team that year in year out was on the cusp or worse of the playoffs. So. Saki Koivu has a lot of heart and is one of the classiest players in the NHL, and the fans really returned that to him in the Anaheim game, and just a lot of respect given, and I loved it. I was just in tears by the end of it, but it was incredible.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I mean, he's such a staple of that franchise.